And we are live. What's going on Facebook and YouTube Live? It is your boy Billy Wroe and Coach
Taralyn Michelle here, everybody. Tuesdays. I always love Tuesdays. Welcome back to Taralyn Michelle and Billy Wroe Live. And yeah, we're getting into it today. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's bittersweet. We've been doing this for 15 weeks and it feels like it just went just like that. But we're at the season finale for season 1 of TMB Dub Live. I like
You
that.
know
I
what?
like
That
that.
I love it. And you know what's so crazy is like you said, I still can't believe it's 15 episodes. I still can't believe that I said yes. I remember y'all, I don't even know if I can't recall whether or not we shared this story, but Billy and I we talk all the time. We've been doing this thing, these conversations that you see us having on this show is just a regular part of our being and has been for well over a decade now. And so
Yes.
Billy and I were doing one of our powwows that we do daily, and he says, I would love for us to have a show where we just have conversations like what we have. I would like to do something like that with you. I said, yeah, okay. He said, yeah. I said, yeah. And so he said, okay, I was thinking something like weekly. I'm like, okay. He was like, well, Tuesdays work for me. I said, well, let me get my calendar.
Mhm.
Well, not this Tuesday, but the next one. He said, all right. And then he said the time. I said, that's it. And then we just came on.
Live.
Right. And so then to start that and have no freaking clue what we're doing to get to episode 15, season 1 wrapping up today. But I have to say to you guys, even though we're wrapping up season 1 for today, we're going to be on a little bit of a hiatus so we can get together rolling out season 2, but you're still going to see some glimpses of what you've missed if you're just now connecting with us so that you can stay in the know up until we launch again. It is going to be July 26th, correct?
That feels correct.
It feels about right. So yeah,
Feels correct.
a little bit of a 3-week hiatus, but then we'll be coming back with the bizang, and it's not going to get anything but more substantial and fruitful from there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So tonight's topic, it's a topic that I'm very fond of in life in general. Tonight's topic we decided would be useful versus usury.
Hey, Maddie. I see my girl in the chat.
Oh, hey, what's going on, Maddie? As always, I like to kind of share what we both think about the thoughts, but I'll start with you. When you thought about the top, or when we started talking about this particular topic, useful versus usury, what came to mind for you?
The useful part was easy for me, seeing that I always want to be a benefit, something that is I like to be in relationships, any type of relationship, not just intimate, any type of relationship. I like to be that person who can be a resource, someone that has something that's bringing to a situation. Whereas the usury part, I think that's the part that a lot of us don't think of, because I like to be someone who's a resource and supportive in situations. I never saw that as being something that other people would be attracted to because they can get from it, not necessarily wanting to give back to me. So there's a, when I think of it, the word that sticks out in my mind is reciprocity or lack thereof. That's what comes to mind first and foremost for me with that. What about you?
So it's funny a word comes to mind for you, because the word, even though it's in both words, that comes to mind for me is use. How we use things in our life, whether that is the things that we have to give, how we use our gifts, or the things that we receive from others, how we use those resources that are outsourced or allocated to us. And immediately when I think of that individual word use, I think of abuse, the abnormal use of.
Mm,
And it's the abnormal use of that gift that we have to give, where we're sometimes giving to buckets with holes in the bottom of them. And so everything that we give just falls straight through, and never really takes root or builds up upon that or within that person's life. And then the abuse side of that being in the usury side is because of what I would perceive humans' inert desire to be loved, uh, to be connected with one another. That sometimes we will um, give our gift to the wrong person, and that person is willing to just eat it up and eat it up and eat it up and eat it up as long as we're willing to give it. So I think about how when we are trying to create that connection, that we sometimes create those unhealthy environments where being used or allowing users to use us um, becomes that abuse as well. So that's what really kind of got me thinking about the areas of this topic, and the experiences that I've had in my life when it comes to use. But I'm going to post a question really quick in the chat. Uh, what is your definition? To type right. This is the thing about doing it live.
and I will say to anyone that's out there watching, feel free to join us up on the virtual stage. Some of you guys want to keep it in the chat with the comments, which is all good. That's cool. As
Mm-hmm.
you know, we always take the time to include that your comments because they matter. But hey, join us up on the virtual stage. You know, that is a very interesting perspective. Because I know that for me, when it came to relationships, it wasn't. Now with some wisdom, I put more thought and intentionality into the connections that I make with people. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. You just run into people and either you groove and you fit or you don't. That's just kind of what it is. And
Right.
if you met like back in the day when I was doing my clubbing thing and got my drinking and my dancing on and regular karaoke and stuff like that, a lot of people you connect with are because of superficial reasons like that. And so you'll have those superficial things in common. And so then these are relationships that can go on and on and on. And you're with these people because of that. But as far as actually having the wisdom and maturity to look at certain situations and how that person fit with who I was and who I was becoming, I didn't have the wisdom or the depth to even do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
then having this conversation now, it has a completely and totally different meaning because I'm looking from a completely and totally different vantage point as
Right.
to what people mean in my life, not just in terms of just the usury versus the useful, what somebody is contributing and what I'm given takes me back to frequency in your book, the frequency and the signals in which we exchange in dealing with each other. That's one aspect of it, but another aspect of it is really taking the time to look at whether or not even getting into the depth of the exchange and this and that, if this person is even somebody that fits within the realm of what you're doing, where you are, who you are, and where you're going. If
Right.
they even fit into that space in your life to even bother to invest that type of time. Because I do understand now that any type of connection that I have, that is an investment of time. That's an
Mm-hmm.
investment of energy. That's an investment of and not just energy, spiritual energy. Because I'm like, y'all, I'm a huge energy person. All of those things matter. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, thinking about this and how I've had to weed out, close out some seasons of some
Right.
relationships because now I understand. Okay, a lot of the times we'll have a negative energy or we'll say, man, these things are happening in my life and I don't understand why. We're looking to specific external things and not including people in that.
Right.
There's a whole lot that people are bringing with them when they occupy your space or occupy spaces within your life. So understanding that now makes me much more observant I
Mhm.
would say. Relationships are no longer happenstance. They're not things where I choose to have connections with people just based on superficial commonalities. So,
Yeah, I think what you what you said alone kind of brings me to the gray area of being useful or being a user or usury, um, in the sense of relationships in general. When you say we're not even taking into account people, in that the things that might be throwing us off, we're like, oh, it's not the people, it's the events that are taking place. Well, typically events are connected to people.
to people,
But I
right?
think about how easy it is for when we have these broken spaces in our lives, whether it be depression, anxiety, fear of missing out, whatever it may be. We have these broken spaces in our life. How easy it is for us to, I'm trying to think of the word, but how easy it is for us to fill those broken cracks with the putty of people, but not. But I
Mhm.
mean, there's so many different types of putty. Some putty is meant to be outside and can handle different weather conditions. Other putties are meant to be inside and are designed to not be in the weather. And so when you're kind of just aimlessly filling your life with these people, you
Yeah.
almost slip from that being a useful person yourself into a user, because you're fostering relationships with people that you were never meant to foster relationships with, but you're using them to fill those gaps or fill those holes in your life. And so for me, like when I think about the intentionality of the relationships that I have, there have been some relationships where I'm like, I remember, I just now realized that I've done this for a very long time since I was young. I remember I'd be
Mhm.
walking through the mall, and I remember one time specifically, I was walking through the mall with this gorgeous young lady, and I mean, I was like, she is bad. Like I wanted to be all in, but we had a conversation from one end of the mall to the other end of the mall,
Uh-huh.
and we were acquaintances, so that wasn't strange for us or unheard of for us. But we're having this conversation, and we get to the escalator, and she's going up, and I'm not planning to go up. And so we get there, and I was like, hey, it was really nice speaking with you. I think you're great and all these wonderful things. You have a good day. She's like, oh, I'm going upstairs. I said, okay, well, have a good day going upstairs. I'm not going upstairs, I'm going this way.
Not going that
and
way.
and it was really interesting because even in my adolescence, where I should be trying to get the number and I should be trying to like get some one-on-one time with this young lady, I was just like, I don't believe our lives are meant to be connected like that. And there
Yeah.
were glimpses of me understanding that. And then there were completely other glimpses of me having zero clue as to what usury was. But there were glimpses of me understanding that concept of some people are for the moment. And that moment for her and I specifically was from this end of the mall to this end of the
To
mall.
that.
That was that moment and that was it. But sometimes what we try to do is we try to force more moments. We try to force more time. We try to embarrass people to come and give us what we want from them. That
Mhm.
goes to that video that I sent you this week about the young lady being mad that her son's father wouldn't bring food for other her other three children. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna shame him, I'm gonna expose him, you guys think he's this good dude. And it's like, the guy was very clear as to, I am taking care of my son. That is where I am coming from, taking care of my son. That's it. And if it makes your kids feel bad who are not my children, then have our son come out and eat in the car with me. Then have me pick up our son and I'll take him to go and get food by himself. But being very clear as to, this is not my responsibility. Now, if he decided to bring food for her other three children's, hey, commendable, upright dude. But the fact that he chose not to doesn't make him not an upright dude. And
Exactly.
so it's being able to really, like, for me, understand for myself personally who should be in my inner circle, and to understand when people try to drag me into their inner circle or drag me into situations where I can be useful to them. I'm very I'm very guarded in that regard. So there's nothing I have a problem with giving, but I have learned through a host of mastermind meetings and experiences that I'm
Yeah.
only willing to give what I want to give. After I start giving things that I no longer want to give, then I'm not even given in the proper spirit. And you know the spiritual principles behind that. If
Yeah.
you're giving out of the abundance of your heart, you're going to receive a wonderful harvest. But if you're giving begrudgingly, out of spite, out of irritation, out of I really don't want to do this, if that's what you're giving out of, then you're poisoning your own soil, and the seeds that you plant are not going to reap the harvest that you're even giving. So
I
what are
agree
your
with that.
thoughts?
You know, while you're talking, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about how the personal value aspect fits into this. And here's a perfect example. I had a conversation, this is earlier today. A client of mine was sharing with me a situation. Now, this particular person that she connected with, she connected because of a hobby that they
Okay.
have in common. Okay. So they connected because of this hobby, and she was impressed by this person because this person is an attorney. She presents well, she speaks well. And so she immediately, because of the context in which she met her, there's like this sisterhood within this context of this activity that everybody shares. And then what this woman's profession is, she just immediately put this woman on a certain level. She gave her this type of this respect, which we should always give people respect, but I'm talking about actually giving more. Hey Tam, giving more to this person than I felt like she even knew the person well enough to do. I don't think she knew the person well enough to have this type of regard for her just based on what she does for a living. So anyway, she considered this woman a sister. And so then this woman ends up contracting her daughter, who's a teenager, to do some behind the scenes type of marketing within this business that she has, because this is something that her daughter freelances and does. Long story short, she was telling my friend or client and her daughter that everything was great, only for her to terminate the relationship with the daughter, which she could do. It wasn't a problem with that. But she had an issue and decided that she wasn't going to pay the girl, which is
Oh,
never okay. Right.
right.
So then
Oh.
that so then that situation happens. So my girl slash client, she has a conversation with this person. She kind of wanted her daughter to take the lead on handling it since she was contracted, and let her see that thing. But she did let her know, well, hey, if there was an issue, there's something we need to discuss. But time went on, she still hadn't paid the child. So eventually she does end up paying the child. But then now she's throwing shade about her experience with the child, which completely and totally took my client off course, because she's like, well, I'm thinking we're cool and this, and that. So anyway, long story short, there was this nasty exchange. And when I say nasty, it wasn't outward, but you know how women can subtly be nasty, nice, nasty. It was that type of
Hmm.
situation. And what it was that the way the woman handled the situation, she wasn't used to being called to the carpet. So she deflected it and made it about she was the victim and she was done wrong. Okay, so to our topic, what I was telling her when she called me and she said, well, hey, she shared the text and everything with me. She shared how she was impacted by the situation. And as she spoke of the situation, she was talking about, this happening and how she felt. And I always try to be a kind person. I try to be this type of person. I try to be that type of person. You know, it's she made it about her. This woman's shortcomings, she made it about her. And it's all because you went into this situation viewing this person as something more than you simply because of a title. You felt as though your association with them, you could somehow be useful or seen as more, instead of it just being a situation where we just connect. Hey, this sister's an attorney. She's doing what it is that she's doing. I think that's great. Let me get to know her. But instead, because of what this person appeared to be, she saw herself as less and set herself up to find out that this person was wearing a mask the whole entire time. They were not
Hmm.
even the way that they presented themselves. So then when we talk about relationships, usefulness versus usury, I think that depending on what side of the coin you're on, because either side can be a negative depending on the person that you're dealing with, depending
Right.
on what their agenda is, depending on how they're approaching the situation. How you're able to navigate this would depend on what your personal value system is when you're going into relationships to begin with. Are you seeing yourself as someone who is worthy of? who has already been validated by yourself and your creator? Or how are you going into different situations and viewing yourself, which in turn can a lot of the times dictate how people receive you and how they treat you?
Right.
Because in those types of situations, if you're going into the situation at a deficit, feeling as though you're less than, if your insecurities are at the forefront, then somebody who didn't even see your insecurities, if you show them to them, an opportunist is going to pounce on them. And that's
Right.
how you can end up in the situation where it ends up being a situation of usury for you. You're going into it thinking one thing, but because of the way you're presenting yourself and that feeling of being less than or not measuring up to or not being on the same level of, taking and dictating or putting energy out that lets a
Mhm.
person who's looking for a way in to get something, that there is a way in to get something. So I hope that
Right.
made sense. But yeah, it was a lot.
Well, it's funny. It's almost like when people lead with titles with me, it's always a challenge because it's almost like setting the stage as this is what you can expect from me. And in any introduction, almost every introduction, probably every introduction since I was a kid, I would introduce myself always. I mean, as far back as elementary school. Hi, my name is Billy Wroe, because that's for me an all encompassing title. You get everything of me with me. And so I'd always introduce myself first and last name. Um, so it's fascinating when people lead with titles. It's almost like if I was to say, "Oh, I'm a chef," the expectation would be that I'm going to cook. I'm
Right.
going to make food, and my food should be delicious. Um, my If I'm, like you said, an attorney, then the expectation is I'm probably a legal expert. But a lot of people don't even realize with law, there's so many facets of law. You could be asking somebody
Exactly.
tax questions, and they're like, "Hey, I'm not a tax attorney. I'm a real estate attorney, or I'm a commercial business attorney, or I'm a criminal justice attorney." Like, there's so many facets. It's really hard when somebody gives you a title to just allocate a certain level of respect. I'm more of a person who will give you respect and then allow you to show me where you should fall on that spectrum of respect. I'm going to do my best not to get disrespectful, um, but I'm going to allow your overall character as we interact dictate how we interact. I remember a couple years back, we allowed a family to stay with us for, I can't even remember how long, maybe 30 days that we
Mm.
allowed a family to stay with us. They were on hard times and they were kind of transitioning between the house they were leaving and the house they were going to. And I remember in that situation, people will, "Oh, well, when I get there, I'm going to help out and I'm going to do this." And one of
Mhm.
the things that really rubbed me the wrong way was I'm not a dog hater, but I'm not a dog lover. I don't really care to have animals because animals bring on a certain level of responsibility that
Yeah.
I'm not interested in because I have kids. um,
Right.
but because of that, when they were like, "Hey, I got a pit bull," she would be coming with us. I was like, "You're gonna have to find somewhere else for your pit bull to be at because number one, I have kids, and I don't know your pit bull. I'm not, the whole fallacy. Oh, they're aggressive dogs. It could have been I have a Chihuahua. Your Chihuahua's gonna have to find another place to stay because the last thing I want is your dog biting my children. I will end your dog's life if it hurts my child. So I'm trying to keep us out of a situation to where we don't have any unnecessary situations pop up."
Right.
And so I remember they moved in while I was still at work. Like, they came while I was still at work, and I get home, and the first thing I see is there's this dog in my backyard, and I'm like, part of me wants to say, "Pack all your stuff and get the hell out."
I've never heard this story before, but I already do. I know you know that story.
What's going on, Soto?
Hey, Soto.
But the other part of me is like, I
And I
gotta.
think that's Chinda. Hey, Chinda. I remember
Oh,
that. Yeah. She's a
um,
Facebook user. I know that
oh, okay.
comment.
But part of me is like, I have to, or not have to, I want to be the person who extends grace, because you're already in a situation, and though you're creating another situation within that situation,
Right.
um, at the end of the day, no big deal. And so, like week 3, I forget, something happens and a service guy has to come to our house. Normally, this is not an issue because I don't have a goddamn
There are
dog.
no pets, right?
But the guy shows up, and when he shows up, he's like, hey, does the dog bite? I'm like, hey, it's not my dog. I don't really know. I was like, it listens to me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the dog for a walk. Now I got dog responsibilities that I also didn't want, but I'm going to take the dog for a walk so you can do what you need to do. And then I'll come back whenever you're done. Just let me know. And so the dog didn't have a collar to attach a leash to. She had a leash, but she didn't have a collar. So what I did is I took the leash, turned it backwards, and made it where it would be able to slip. Like if I need to use it as a choker, I could choke her to restrain her. And so we go walking around, and first the dog did. I've grown up with dogs, so I know how to handle a dog. But this is a pit bull, and it's very strong, and it's trying to pull me while it's walking. I'm like, hey, you're not the alpha dog. I am. So you're going to stay right next to me. So every time you try to pull, we're going to stop. We're going to reset. You're going to come back to my side, and we're going to start walking again. So we did this for like about half a block. And then all of a sudden she understood, okay, I'm going to stay at your pace. And she stopped pulling the chain. Well, we get back and we come back. The guy's done. I put her in the backyard, give her water. And I'm thinking, okay, we're good. No big deal. Later on, I come back from the gym and I get I forget if it was a text or something, but it was like, this person's upset because the dog is neck where the leash was at, is the area is red and irritated, and the person is upset.
It shouldn't be in my house.
And this is why those height dogs. This is not the heights dogs.
Those heights dogs.
But I was like, okay, I'll go and talk to this person. So I'm talking to them, and they're emotionally upset. They feel like I kind of like abused their dog. And I'm thinking like, I'm not abused. I didn't abuse your dog. We were on a walk. I said, but this is the reason why I didn't want there to be a dog here. Not only can my children be hurt, but there's other inconveniences that I'm not interested in with having a dog. And now we're in an argument because you think I did something, but I had to do what I needed to do because, that's what he was there for, there was a potential gas leak. I'm not going to let my house blow up or everybody die in the house because there's potential gas leak. So I don't know what to tell you. Sorry.
We wouldn't even be having this conversation if you had respected what I said, and that was find some place for your dog.
Right. Period, point blank. So we go to the end of this 30-day period, and their house is still not ready. And they're like, hey, now remember at the beginning, I'm going to help out. I'm going to pay for this. I got you. When I get my tax money, all these different things. And all those things just went over my head. Please believe I was not holding my fingers crossed. Like, I really hope this comes true. Whatever, JC. But all those things never manifested. And we got to the end of 30 days, and they were like, well, the house isn't ready, and I need like another week. Is that okay? And I'm always having this internal dialogue with myself. Is that something I want to give? You know what? I don't have a problem giving that. So I gave him 7 more days. And in that 7 more days, more things, like one of her kids came back. He had decided he didn't want to live with us because I had rules. And he was like, I don't want to abide by those rules. And then he didn't have nowhere to go. And he was like, can I come back to your space? And I was like, we got to talk before you could just chill in my house. So I don't care whose kid you are. And so fast forward, I give them another week, and then the house still isn't ready. And they're like, can we get 5 more days? And I said, no, that the 7 days I just gave you was the last that I was willing to give you. And that's the difference for me about being useful. I'm being useful to you because I know you're in a situation, and I'm hoping to help you get through this gap that you need to get through. Yeah. But I'm not going to allow your usury tendencies to take advantage of my kindness and my usefulness, because now I'm not willing to be useful to the detriment of myself. That's not helpful to either party, because all it's going to do is erode and rot out the relationship. And I'm always going to be holding that time. Well, you stayed at my house that time. I have no ill will towards this experience as far as them staying at my house, as far as even the dog being there. It was not something that I wanted, but the end of the day, I gave what I was willing to give because I could have easily said, everybody out. I told you no dog. You brought a dog. Everybody out. But I
And
didn't do
wait,
that.
not only did you tell them no dog and they brought a dog, you still were gracious enough to allow the dog to stay for the remainder of the time. Because
Right.
me, I said the moment you're talking to me about your dog's neck when your dog wasn't supposed to be there, dog be gone for the rest of the time that you're here. And if they don't like that, then so you were just really, really good in that situation. I think too that situation that you're describing is one that being able to pull the plug in the middle and have a hard stop. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with sometimes. It's like I used to be one of those type of people where I'm loyal to a fault even still. So now it doesn't hurt me as much as it used to because I'm much more selective about the people I rock with. So it's not like it used to be. But um because I was loyal, I if I'm all in with somebody, I'm all in. There's no breaks. I'm there. I'm rocking till the wheels fall off. I don't care if it's good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. But I felt like once I would say yes and step into a situation, once it wasn't working anymore, it was hard for me to pull a hard stop and get out of the situation because I was like, well, I really like being loyal. I really like being there for people. That type of thing makes me feel good. I'm one of those types of people where forget about receiving gifts. I really like giving them. I could care less if I get one. I mean, it's cool if I get one, but I'm always that person that really likes to do those types of things and be there for people. So it was a challenge to be able to be in the middle of a situation and say, you know what? This is no longer working for me. It's turning into a situation where the usury has happened. It was
Right.
hard for me to unplug from that and not feel bad about it, not feel as though I was doing something to the person that was actually doing something to me. you know,
Right.
that was something that was really, really hard to learn how to do. And I think that for the average person, it's something that's really hard to do, especially when you're looking at the needs of the other person, when you're looking at the support that you're giving the person. And you feel good doing it, even sometimes when it's most times when it's inconvenient. If it's a part of your personality, it's not that you necessarily mind. So, what would be something then that you think what would be advice that you would give for folks out there who are in those types of situations where it's gone from you trying to be useful and supportive into a situation where it's one-sided and the using has happened and they need to pull the plug?
Mm. I think if I was to give the advice in a nutshell, it would be it's never too late to draw a boundary. It's never too late to draw a boundary. I don't care what I allowed yesterday. Today,
That is so yesterday.
that's yesterday.
What
Today
I
is a
learned
new
yesterday is so yesterday.
day. And that reminds me of another situation where somebody wanted to move in out here in Utah, and they
Yes.
were used to who I was 8 years ago. Hey, we can kind of be in and out of each other's life. That's cool. If you need me, I'm here. And in the 8 year gap of us not speaking to each other, that changed for me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I wasn't looking for the person, wasn't reaching out, trying to contact the person. It just was like radio silence. They went through a life event that was traumatic. I understand that. But it took 8 years to recover. And at year 8, I had already moved on.
That
Um, and so the boundary, though there was already an extension of which there was a time in my life they could call me and say, hey, Ro, I need a spot to stay for like 2 weeks. Is it cool if I come and stay with you? Where I would have been like, yeah, let me go ahead and talk to my partner about that. And we'll see how we can support you in that. There
yeah.
was a time where that existed. But 8 years later and I ain't talked to you is not that time. And so sometimes it's like we get caught up. I think not just it's never too late to draw a boundary. Sometimes we get caught up in the aspect of history that we have with people. History has a huge weight on the decisions that we make with the people that we are connected to or that we interact with. I mean, my best friend, she told me one time, I was upset about something with the person I was in a relationship with. And she says, look, B, if I did the exact same thing, you wouldn't be upset at me. So why are you upset at them because they did it? And it really, that really stuck with me, because this is like over 10 years ago that she said this to me, but it really stuck with me
Mhm.
that, wow, history that you have with somebody plays a significant role in the grace that you give somebody. If I cut you off and you know my car, you know my head when you see it through the windshield, if I pull out and cut you off, that's not a road rage incident. It's, bro, what the hell are you doing? But
Exactly.
but if I'm a stranger and I pull out in front of you and cut you off, all of a sudden your mind is like, that MNFer has been waiting all day in this parking lot to pull out in front of me. And it's so strange how that dynamic can also work against us. That
Yeah.
history dynamic can also work against us. Sometimes you got to let history be what it is. Hey, we had a great time in 2000, in 2010. We had a
Yeah.
great time, but now we're in 2022, and that was 12 years ago. And if there hasn't been further investments to warrant the exchange of your usefulness to this person, or extend your usefulness to this person, at some point it's okay to pull the plug and say, hey, this what do they call it? I forget what they call it, but this abundance that you're receiving, this overflow of abundance that you're receiving from me, yeah, that flow is about to flow in a different direction. And
Yeah.
wish them well. Like, I think that's what we don't grasp, is when we allow ourselves to stay on the wrong side of usefulness and into that usury component, what it does is it creates this malice. I don't know why my camera's doing that. Oh, maybe because I'm
Oh,
moving too much.
okay.
But what it does is it creates this malice um, within us. And then now we're resentful about the things that we have to do. Ah, they need me to come and pick them up from work. Ah, they need me to run and go and take them to the store. Ah, they need me to come over and help them with this project. We become resentful about the relationship. And that is toxic, not only to you, eventually it becomes toxic to the other party, because eventually that resentment slips out. What about you? How would you guide somebody back from their boundary of being used?
I love what you said about being able at any point in time to pull the plug. But I think also too, to expand upon what you were talking about when you talk about the histrionic way in which we deal with people. It's so true. I think that being okay with the fact, well, first of all, if you're in the midst of something, I think that giving yourself permission for how you feel with your boundary to be okay. It is okay for this to no longer work for you. And the reason why I say that is because there are a lot of things that I didn't give myself permission to be okay with when it came to myself. I always felt like there was a space of me that should be more accommodating to other people. So I think given that something so small as saying giving yourself permission, if you're one who hasn't done that, you'll learn that there are lots of areas that we don't give ourselves permission in. Just the mindset of around money and the mindset around any type of growth that you want in your life. A lot of things that a lot of what we think is blocking us from moving beyond where we want to be has to do with ourselves and us not giving ourselves permission and saying, you know what, in spite of everything that's going on around me, I want this and I can do this. This can happen. And so I'm going to tell myself yes, because I want it to happen. And then that mindset shift means a lot. Then back to your point about the history situation, I learned that it is so okay to explore rekindling a relationship. And it's okay to lead in letting the person know that, like, I have a girlfriend of mine on and off throughout the years. She's been in and out, in and out, in and out of my life. And I always knew, first of all, she was always the same person when she came back, which was a problem for me because I was not the same person. I was constantly and evolving. Dude, you still the same person from high school. This is not what's hot, basically.
Right.
And so every time she came back around with her, it was like, boom, let's go back at it, the way our friendship used to be. And with me, I would always pump the brakes and slow it down. We need to court each other again. We
Right.
need to get to know about each other. So for those relationships that have had that gap and that lapse in some years, it's okay if you want to revisit them on new terms and set what those new terms are going to be, instead of
Right.
just allowing somebody to catch you back up and start going with the flow of what was. And I think that resentment piece that you were talking about, That's because that'll happen. There's that gap, but no one actually pauses to set the terms for what are the new boundaries going to be. Do we need new boundaries? Are you even the same person? Because I know I'm not. So if I'm not, I'm just betting that you're not either. So do we still connect in the ways that we used to? What
Right.
connected us when we were in high school is not going to be the same thing that's going to connect us as adult women with lives and responsibilities and some different things that we've experienced, that we've weathered, some things we may still be weathering. What is this situation going to look like today, and is it even something that's viable today?
Mm,
Would something that would a new connection be completely and totally different? What would that dynamic look like? Would there even be anything there for us to connect on now that we're different people? That
right.
part, and so that's something that I'm always very aware of, especially when I have folks that are those relationships or those people resurfacing later on, and I haven't connected with them in a while. So I think those would be the thoughts that come to mind for me. I,
Nice.
I wonder within this conversation, when we talk about the useful versus the usury, what do you think are probably some of the major misconceptions that we can make when it comes to um, the dynamics of relationships? And I asked that question because I know one of the biggest misconceptions that I had was that if there's a connection, then the connection is enough to build upon. And I've learned that not all connections are good connections or fruitful connections or even real connections. Like
Right.
earlier when I was talking about that relationship, that turned out to be a whole entire mask that
Right.
that person was wearing. So just because you're connected doesn't mean that you know exactly what type of connection that is just yet. So for you, what do you think about that?
So I'm, and this is going to sound strange, and I don't use this word in a negative way, but I'm very critical about the people who are around me. In the sense of not that I'm judging them and they make mistakes and it's like, oh, you're a horrible person, but more so in the sense of, does this relationship, is it still relevant to where I'm headed in life or what I'm trying to do in life? That's what I mean by critical. Um, and I'm always looking at the actions of the people around me because I have been in situations where people have been jealous, people have been envious,
Mm.
people have been saboteurs of my success and their success. Hey, I'm not really trying to win, and I don't want you to win either, so we both go lose.
Not just you, we both going down.
Right? Who's coming with me? Not me. Um, so what I look at is, even I hold myself to this standard. If the person wins tomorrow, whatever they win at, am I going to be happy for them? And am I going to still want to support that success for them? If
Yeah.
I'm going to be upset, jealous, mad that, well, it ain't my turn, I need to win too. If that's where I'm going to be at, then I need to separate myself from that relationship because there is something that about me. This is what a lot of people don't like to do, is look at it and say it's me. But something about me that is attempting to use them to gain access to something that I perceive that they have or are going to have. My brother and I, when we were younger, we used to do gospel rap, and one of the things is it was like we would have practices and workouts and all kinds of things that we had to do in order to get to where we wanted to go. And we had this saying that it was like, if you didn't know me before I blew up, don't come around trying to know me after I blow up.
That part.
Because those people are not around to help you win. They're not around to see you win, but they want to glean and use you when you're winning. So that means if you start losing, those people are going to disappear. I need people who are going to be on my side from the relationship standpoint. I need people who are going to be there when I'm at a high and when I'm at a low. There's
That
been plenty of times. Aunt Jackson knows I used to knock on his window when I was a kid, middle of the night. Hey, that you, Ro? Yeah, that's me. Come on in. And sometimes we just talk and I'd be frustrated. Other times I'd be bawling in tears. And that my brother had me in those moments. And then the biggest days of my life, he's also been there to celebrate with me. So that's what I really look for, is that person who is going to be an advocate, a support, a cheerleader, but also that person who's going to say, hey, look, I got your back when things are not going so well. And I might give you some tough love in the midst of that and say, hey, look, you're messing up and this is how you're messing up. I'm still going to be here, but I need you to correct this behavior. You need you to correct this behavior. Your sons need you to correct this behaviors. And those are the type of people that I have in my life, and Jack's being one of those people. So that's what I look for in the relationship with people is, am I being the user because I'm trying to get something from you? And it's really easy, being an entrepreneur, it's easy to fall into that trap of, okay, this can add value to me. But then the question for you and I know because we just had this conversation today, the question for you and I is, okay, but how do I add value to it? Or how do I add value to
Always.
them? It's not just about receiving. There has to be reciprocation. If that reciprocation is not there, eventually that imbalance is going to cause toxic separation in that relationship, no matter what it is. What
Yeah,
about for you with people?
yeah, I think that that you said, well, you know that because we actually live this stuff. People think we just be talking,
We just
but
talk on Tuesdays.
yeah, showing up talk about some stuff again. Nah, we actually do this. But yeah, you know this because you know me. Absolutely. It's all about that exchange of value. And like you say, up good, bad, and different, up, down. Um, me being that person that's always going to be there in the same thing. The people who I know intimately and have these relationships with the exact same reciprocity. And I think another thing that's really important with that too, another thing that I look for is someone who can see me and not just look at me. And the reason why I say that is because throughout life there are ebbs and flows and ups and downs. With everything that I'm good at and all of the stuff that I know, I am still a flawed human being, and I am much better at being a support and seeing and speaking life into and helping somebody to expand upon and reproduce exponentially who they are and what they do. That is my superpower. However, I'm not as my gift works for me, but it works much better for other people. Let's just say that, I, you know what I'm saying? And so I need people around me who are forgiving and allow themselves to really be able to see beyond just the externals of who I am. You know, somebody who really takes an interest in experiencing and getting to know who Taralyn really is and allowing me space to be that with them. I think that that's so important. And I think our relationship is very much like that. There's so many layers to not just our relationship, but to us as individuals. And I love that we have created an environment within our friendship where Ro could just be Ro all the time. If it's a good time, it's a bad time, if it's a vulnerable time, if it's not one, we know that when we're with each other, we can just be. And that's because I don't just look at you, I see you and I see deeply
Right.
into you. And people who are interested in investing themselves in that type of dynamic within a relationship, because in order to have that type of relationship, you're giving of yourself as much as you're getting of other people. There are some spaces that you have to allow yourself to open up vulnerably in order to have that exchange. It's an exchange that makes that space comfortable. Even that's what you describe with Ant, your relationship with Ant. You know, you knew that you were okay to just be you, no matter what that meant. And there was no judgment. He wasn't just looking at who he felt like you should be and how it looked like things should be for you. It just was what it was. And he allowed that to be. And look at the relationship that you talk about today because of that. So I don't want, for me, I don't need any superficial, you know, when people think of superficiality, they only think of things, but I'm talking about even superficial when it comes to connections, emotional, spiritual. I don't need any type of superficial relationships or connections in my life. I want things that are abundant. I want people who are abundant and substantial, because that's when you really get to exchange value that means something. I want to
Hmm.
exchange value that comes from the heart, and I want to receive the exact same thing. So that's something that's super important to me.
I'm gonna catch up the chat really quick. But I need to type a note really quick.
You said we'll get your note then. Oh wait, I wasn't even up there. Cool, I got you. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the things when I first saw that this is where we were going this week. It brought up so many different thoughts for me because thinking about this topic and relationships, having this conversation today with all the different types of relationships we have, brother, sister, mother, spouse, significant other, whatever those things may be, even social types of relationships. When I think about relationships today and how I view them, it would have been so helpful to have the insight that I now have, to be able to assess what's important to pay attention to when you're talking about relationships that are, where there's reciprocity, where there's room to grow because you allow yourself to be open and connect yourself with people who are in that same space, comfortable with the discomfort of vulnerability with the right people, is such a game changer in life. I it was just, I think it was last week, could have been the week before. I was a part of a conversation where we actually, you were there. It was when we were at Chinda's event, where we were speaking during the event, and they talked about um, basically community,
Mhm.
opening up and letting people know what's going on with you. And there was one woman that was there in the chat. She was like, open up so people can do. Basically, she was fearful of doing that, and that's the thing that keeps us bound. And admittedly, you can't just go with anybody in any
Right.
situation and put yourself out there, that I
Right.
definitely wouldn't advise that. But I think that, to the point of this conversation that we're having today, taking the time to really put yourself out there, there's levels to that, but taking the first steps to put yourself out there so that you can emit the energy to bring to you people who would eventually be your tribe, you
Right.
know that's so very important, and so that's when you're able to experience and develop a skill set when it comes to this usury useful dynamic, because it is a skill set. It's something that you have to practice, which means there's going to be some times you're going to get burnt.
Right.
It's not going to
Time
be
you're gonna burn somebody.
listen, absolutely, that's going to happen, but the benefit overall outweighs anything that you have to put out there.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and catch up the chat. You want me to do the reading today?
You know that.
All right.
You already know.
Oh, we got Facebook user. It says, "I will say it again. Everyone in the room isn't in the room. That's why it's important to know who you are and what you stand for. Absolutely, what you stand for is
That's chin.
critical."
Yeah.
Um, Aunt Jax 79 says, "No is necessary because yes is expensive." Woo, boy, in more
Wow.
ways than money. In more
Man.
ways than money.
Yes.
Your time, your money, your love, and your needs are too valuable to give them to unappreciative folks. I 100%
Indeed,
agree with
indeed.
that. You
Indeed,
already
indeed.
know our campaign. Soto Jose says, "For some reason, I always get caught in relationships where it is only one way." So
Been
one-way
there.
relationships he gets caught in. What would be your advice for how to, because when somebody says they get caught in something, it means they spent more time than they needed to in a situation. For me, that's what that means.
I would
And
also,
so, oh, go
oh no,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go. It's okay. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say I would also pose the question, if you're finding yourself in situations where it's only one-sided, are you going into the situation seeking?
Mm,
Because if you're going into the situation seeking, then that could make it where you're always on that one side. The people, when we're seeking people who are looking for something, we may as well just put a stamp on our forehead. They know what to look for. Predator knows its prey,
right.
and so that's just a question. I don't know if that's the case, but that would be a question that I would ask myself. In relationships, are you seeking, or are you going into it with zero expectation, just taking it as it comes, allowing yourself to receive the person exactly where they are?
That's
That's what
powerful because that zero expectation really leaves you from a place, or leads you to a place where whether you keep the relationship or you let the relationship go is not a disappointment, and it's not a waste of time. Hey,
Yes.
I met this person, they seemed cool, turns out they weren't cool, we moved on with our lives, done. But you're right. When you come seeking, it's like I met this person, they seem cool, so I invited them on this trip with me to hang out, and I paid their way, and then I paid for dinner, and then I paid for their flight, and I paid. Now you're pouring all this stuff out, and then you find they ain't crap, and you're like, I done wasted all my money on this dang M&F'er because they were not who they presented to be. So
Yep.
I would agree with you on that. If you're seeking, you pour more than you should probably pour in the beginning. And back to that conversation where the lady's like, wait a minute, that's how you expose yourself, and then you're vulnerable. Yeah, you're vulnerable when you pour everything that you have into another person's glass, and you don't even know if that glass is plastic or glass itself. So yes, that and a premature pouring of everything you have into a person can be very dangerous or risky. But
And you could be taking and pouring your fine wine and it's some buttermilk. You don't even know what's in that container.
right,
Who gonna do
or
that?
they just got spoiled grape juice.
That's what I'm saying. You know,
Oh.
you don't even know.
So yeah, so I definitely I'm with that. Really quick, because Soto did respond. He says, I think I take it more personally because I'm seeking the same energy and loyalty that I put into these relationships.
Yep.
Ooh. There's a Wednesday word I did called unrealistic expectations. I think that's what it was called. I'd have to look it up. But I think it's called unrealistic expectations. And it's about how what we expect of ourselves, we try to place that expectations on others, and we disappoint ourselves because we are not interacting with ourselves. So there's no way that they're going to meet every expectation that we have or that we are willing to give. But there does need to be some type of reciprocation. So maybe what I would do, based on what you're saying, is seeking that same energy rather than seeking that same energy. Maybe pour your energy at a little more moderated pace, so that way there's an opportunity for you to be able to see if that energy that you're pouring at a moderated pace has some form of reciprocation that's coming back, versus pouring everything and being all in like, hey, I'm loyal to a fault, I'm going to give you all these things, these wonderful gifts and this wonderful time, and I'm going to call and check on you every week. Maybe pours those things in a little more moderation, so that you have the time to see if they are actually going to reciprocate that energy. And then you don't spend as much time, or in, to use your word, you don't get caught in as many one-way relationships, because you're able to see that they're not reciprocating or they're not responding. Or the other solution I would use to this would just be upfront with what it is you're looking for with people. When my wife and I got together, we were both on just like, hey, I'm just looking for somebody to date, have fun, do some trips with, hang out with, but I'm not looking for anything serious. But when that changed, the conversation took place and said, hey, I'm looking for something more serious now. I feel like we're getting more serious. I would like to be more serious. And so that changed the dynamic to where I'm not like, I'm trying to do these things and pour out seriousness. And she's like, hey, we were just having fun. What are you doing? No, we're going to create this accountability through communication, that this is the next place where we're at. Are you coming? If you're not, then I don't want to stay here anymore. So I now need to move
Right.
on, versus being caught up with, I'm doing everything. I'm buying her flowers. I'm massaging her feet. I'm doing everything I can. And she's not into that long-term committed relationship that I'm looking for.
And
So
then
I think,
I also want to add just one more thing to that, that we're talking about with Soto, because those are wonderful points that you put up. I would add to that, um, how about the flip side of that? How about there's nothing to seek because you're the light that you're seeking? A lot of the times we don't give ourselves credit for being exactly what we're looking for. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I've learned during my journey. I've always been what I was looking for. I just didn't see it because I didn't have a true sense of value in myself. I thought that what I now know are my superpowers were going to look like something completely and totally different. I had devalued the things that are innate in me because of personal reasons. You know, my thing was, if what it is that's great about me. This is what I thought before I even knew what my superpowers were. When I used to say, man, I wish I had something that was just dope about me. Well, I didn't see it because in my mind, whatever was dope about me would make me like millions of dollars.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you know, so I couldn't put a price tag on it. And the only reason why the thing that I felt I couldn't put a price tag on had no value is because I didn't see it had any value. You know, so a lot of the times when I was in those spaces of seeking, I was looking for something to complete or to fill that hole. But once I stopped seeking and said, well, you know what? I got my own light. I'm going to spend some time on that. Zero expectations. People that I meet, I'm going to just receive them. I don't want you to come bringing anything specific because then I can't really see who you are. So once I got to that space where I was there, then that's when I discovered what my superpowers were. That's when I was able to connect to them and spend that time to hone those skills, to sharpen those skills, to grow, to actually put myself out there and figure out that, yeah, this is pretty dope. You've been sitting on this the whole entire time. You didn't even know anything about it. So it's just changing the perspective, the space of seeking because you want like energy, but then understanding you are an energy source in yourself. Maybe somebody's looking for you.
Mm.
So to get connected to who you are and connect to that value might help in those type of situations. I know that it did for me. I definitely don't want to miss JC's comment. I'll let you finish. I'm sorry I had to add that.
No, that's definitely good. Good stuff. JC says anyone who depletes your energy is a great example of someone who is not useful in your life. And you know, I want to hang on that a
Yes.
little bit. In your life doesn't mean they're not a useful person. They're
Right.
just not useful in your life.
Then that's okay. Mhm.
And when you can grasp what is useful and what is not useful in your life, you will steer yourself further away from being a user, like a person who's into usury and using others, because you're like, hey, this is really not useful in my life. Going back to that friend who comes back and they still want to go to the club. Hey, look, I'm not trying to really be up till 2 o'clock in the morning unless I'm working on something that's business related.
You hear me?
Other than that, there's no song that's out today that I want to hear that bad at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's important. And then to finish off, do they add value? Do they add to you or take away from you? That who is that?
That's yeah. And
How you
that's
gonna add to me? Who is that? Let us see. How you gonna
oh
add
yeah, yeah, yeah.
to me? Yeah.
That's good, JC. And that is a question. That is a lot of times we don't ask those questions, like you say, because of the histrionic nature of some relationships, or just the fact that a lot of the times we just don't think deep. We don't. We don't. And that's because it requires work.
True.
Stop what I'm doing and think about, are they adding value? Yeah, you do want to do that once you get to be you're not gonna do it in the lost decade. Of course you're not. You're in and out of clubs
Nah.
drinking and stuff and having a good time. But you have to get to a point where yes, these are questions that we ask because who wants to waste time and the emotion, the emotional energy that it takes to not ask these questions. And the thing about it is it's like anything else. It's a practice. So in the beginning, because it's something that you may not be used to, it is cumbersome. It's annoying. Yeah, I really want to think about it. I mean, he fine, but do I really want to ask, does he add value? Well, you probably should. I want to ask. Do I really
want to ask? I'm gonna ruin it.
Glad I don't see. I don't see.
Willful ignorance is not
Oh,
ignorant.
man.
Just
I
for the
know.
record.
I'm just saying it's fun sometimes though.
Uh-huh.
Well, at least until the morning, but
Until
I
it's not.
digress.
It's fun until it's not. That's what I tell people.
I digress.
Really quick, Soto says it's because my heart won't let me. I try my hardest to pour it out and help everyone. I think that comes from sometimes. I'm trying to put this in a manner in which it's my own personal life. When I was a kid growing up, my father and my mother to an extent, we didn't really play together. We didn't do a whole lot of things together. Like he'd take me fishing, and every once in a while we run around and have fun. But for the most part, I was a kid doing things with kids. And my wife and I have this conversation frequently where the kids will be like, hey, can we play a board game? Hey, do you want to do something? Hey, do you want to do something with me? And I'm thinking like, well, I'm an adult. Why are you asking me to play with you? I'm not a kid anymore. And sometimes I don't want to play. I just want to
Right.
veg out. But I'm aware that what was poured into me or my experience in childhood doesn't have to be my children's experience in childhood. Now
Mm.
that doesn't mean every time they say they want to play, I'm like, okay, I gotta change the dynamic. But I try to be intentional on, hey, I may not play right now, but we can play on Friday, or we can play on Saturday, or we can play later today. I'll try to get around to like maybe 3 no's and a yes. Like, no, I won't
Right.
play. No, I won't play. No, I won't play. Okay, I'll play a board game with you. But I try to change that dynamic. And so I say that to say that sometimes when we're allowing our heart to make all the decisions in a single area, we
Yeah.
are neglecting the gut and we are neglecting the mind. We are neglecting our logic center. We're neglecting our instincts, and we're just going with what feels right, what feels like I want to do. So in doing that, it's almost like having a and this is funny because I have my own thoughts on this, but it's almost like having the 3 forms of government and only listening to one of them. It's like, okay, well, we
That part.
decided that the executive branch makes all the decisions. The other 2 branches are no longer relevant. We decided that the judicial branch is going to make all the decisions, and the other 2 branches have nothing to do with it. And
Right.
so, be willing to open up that dialogue with your heart, and even it's okay to lead with your heart, but open up that dialogue between the other 2 centers that you have, your logic center and your instinctual center, so that way your heart is not just recklessly loving and running in and loving on everybody, because honestly, some people just, I'm not going to say are not worthy of love. They're worthy of love, but they're not worthy of your love. And
Come on.
there's a difference between trying to save the world and try to save who you were designed to save.
Come
There's
on now. The specificity
yeah.
of the tribe is real.
Yes, as we always say, this must be destiny.
You hear
Divine
me?
timing is taking place.
All
So
day.
realize it's not your job to help everyone. I've
Yeah.
realized this a long time ago because I have a huge heart and want to help a lot of people, but I also have the ability to look at people and say, not my project. Unless God says, "Hey, yo, Ro,
That's the
you're up."
one.
Not my project.
And
And
listen,
that
that's something as individuals that's so important, and especially in business. Man, you just be helping everybody, that can cost you. I deny people a lot because it's not a good fit. It's not
right.
about the money. If I'm going to take your money and it's going to cause me problems later, it's not worth it. And so yeah, knowing your tribe, yeah, bro, that's big. That's really big.
Yeah. Well,
So
we are way over time. I don't know how that hour
seven
flew
minutes,
by.
you know, Soto, he like, yeah,
All right,
y'all be
he
good.
trying to ask more questions and keep us going. But I looked at the clock and I see we're over time.
We see you, Soto. We see you. I'm gonna go there with you tonight.
So let's see. So still kind of new, quasi new to the segment.
Yeah.
As we're having this conversation, that's why sometimes I'm not able to quickly respond. Is because I'm actually typing down. We take turns going back and forth on the coach's playbook tools. So tonight I have 3 tools that I was taking down from the conversation that I really feel like resonated strongly in regards to this topic of useful versus usury. And so the very first coach's playbook tool, number 1, was have a hard stop and or know your limits. Um, know know what you want to give and know when you have given it. Very, very important,
Yeah.
to avoid being used, to avoid building resentment, and also know, when I say know your limits, know what you're willing to receive from other people. Sometimes people in Soto's experience, where he's pouring everything from his heart into everyone, you can know what your limits are and know what you are willing to receive. And if this person is pouring something that you're not willing to receive, be willing to communicate that. Be willing to open that dialogue and say, hey, look, not that I never want to receive this from you, but that's not where I'm at right now. And that'll avoid you from being the user. And honestly, that makes you much more useful in a relationship standpoint.
I
Um,
agree. I
Tool
agree.
number 2 from the coach's playbook is it's okay to reset the boundary. Look,
Absolutely.
did you say historic? What did you say? What did you
Hist-
say?
I said histrionic relationship.
Histriotic. Histriotic relations.
Y'all got to stop it. No.
Oh man, don't allow history to guilt you into doing things that you don't want to do, or even if you've gone past the boundary, and now you've decided that you no longer want to be on that side of the boundary and you need to bump it back a couple of notches. Be willing to do that. Most of these tools are going to come down to communication, um, because you always get that. Are you mad at me because now you're not doing what you used to do? Are you upset with me? Did I do something wrong? No, you
Trying
haven't
to
done
pull you
anything
back in. Every time I try to leave, something
wrong.
me back.
Right.
Every
That's exactly what it is, though. It's
time I
like
try to go, something keep telling me that no,
that I need you in my life. Right.
no.
And I don't. And so it's that. It's okay to reset that boundary and get it to a place where you're comfortable, where you know you're not nurturing resentment and you're not nurturing malice. You want for I'm gonna say for me, I want in every relationship that I have, I want the best for
Mhm.
that person, even if I'm not it. I want the best for that person. And so if that means I have to pull the boundary back or eliminate a relationship, sometimes you can't pull the boundary back far enough. Eliminate the relationship. That's okay. Do what's going to continue to remain, what's going to continue to allow you to remain useful. And then the third tool, from the coach's playbook is invest in abundant and substantial people.
Hallelujah.
I I cannot tell you how many people I know and the significance that they have in my life,
Yeah.
because they are just, I'm just surrounded by such intelligent, thoughtful, kind, loving, compassionate, willing people that there I have no problem making investments. There's people who call me sometimes. I remember when you had messaged me and you came through do not disturb at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, what's going on? How am I getting a message? Like what? And it's Taralyn, and I'm like, is something wrong? And she's like, oh my bad, I didn't know. I thought you were just gonna get this after you woke
In the
up.
morning.
I didn't know you were gonna get woken up. But she's on my starred contacts to where if there's something that's going on with Taralyn, she can reach me 24/7 because my phone's going to ring. My phone isn't going to say, hey, look, it's outside of Billy's phone hours. My phone's going to ring. But the type of person that Taralyn is that, oh, I didn't know that. And I don't tell most people that they're starred contacts. You just
Mhm.
are or you aren't. But once she found that out, she's like, my bad. I won't be calling at weird hours
I
anymore.
won't be messaging your phone. I'll do it on Facebook or something instead of
Right.
that. It's Billy. I don't keep entrepreneur. I don't have regular business hours. I'm up and off all the time. He's the only person I can contact and be ridiculous like that with. Well, a couple of people. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. So those are the three tools that we have. Really quick to go over them again. Have a hard stop. Know your limits. It's okay to reset the boundary. And last but not least, probably almost most important, is invest in abundant and substantial people. That superficial stuff, like you say, Carolyn, the lost decade only. After
Yeah.
that, do not pass go. Do not collect 200.
Yeah, if you ain't drinking Mad Dog no more, you shouldn't be.
I'm so glad I didn't drink my water. Not the 2020, no.
That 2020, you ain't drinking that 2020 no more. You don't need to be
I don't
doing
even want to drink my water because I'm gonna mess around and spit it out on my damn computer.
it. I was gonna be good. I was. I almost.
So with
Hey,
that,
y'all.
final thoughts for you.
Uh, man, I listen. I think you hit them all with the playbook. You know, at the end of the day, context is everything. It is everything, and I think that you nailed it with that tonight. I think it is it's about time for us to close out. But people, you have tapped into the last episode of season 1 of Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe Live. So we're going to be on a 3-week hiatus. We will return right here, July 26th, which is a Tuesday. You're going to get more, Jose. You're going to. We will return, and when we come back, listen. This is a panel discussion. We're going to be talking and leading in male sexuality. Oh yeah, some of the ways in which these men get into it with these women. And listen, this is all about the men having a voice. The men having a voice, and the panel's going to be fire. You guys are going to want to be here for that. You guys are going to want to come up and have your say. We'll be letting you know a little bit more about that, but join us back here July 26th for the live panel kicking off season 2. But in the meantime, in between time, check for it. We're going to have some clips floating around to give you the opportunity to get caught up. You're going to want to make sure that you are subscribed to the First Row and the Grind Defined Podcast YouTube channel so you can stay in the know. But hey, the Wednesday Word is going nowhere, people. Wednesday Word is going to be every Wednesday, same time, same channel. First Row on YouTube. That's going to be at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. Also, you'll be able to check out what am I talking about? The Grind Defined. There we go. Every Friday. In my face, I'm on something else. The Grind Defined drops fresh episodes every Friday at 7 p.m. You can check me out on thegrinddefined.com as well as any major platform out there by searching the Grind Defined podcast. Make sure you guys show some love to all of our social media. Hey, you have got to, if you haven't already, fire your job, hire your passion. Get that from firstrow.com. National bestseller, first time out the gate. The first chapter is complimentary. You can go ahead and download that, but then you have to pick up the book and the journal because conversations are already happening, and we're going to be expanding upon those fruitful conversations. And I want to make sure that you guys are a part of that. Yes.
Yes.
So, that's it.
That's all we got.
That's all we got. But that's okay. Keep abreast. Make sure you guys subscribe. We'll keep you in the know until we hit back. Get caught up on the episodes. And by all means, check us out in the comments if you have any questions or anything about anything that you've seen, including today, all the way on back until we started. We're out of here, people. Until next time, peace and abundant blessings.
Peace.